Before we begin, please consider subscribing to the channel. I put a lot of time and effort into researching and bringing these forgotten war stories to life. Your support genuinely helps keep this work going. This is the story of the Tigers in their final battles, the brutal last stands in Hungary and around Budapest, a desperate, chaotic campaign marked by full immersion, total violence and pure battlefield insanity. Told in vivid third-person detail, this account takes you deep into the final armoured clashes of the Waffen-SS as they try to hold the line one last time. It's harsh, it's intense, but above all, it's real. Followed by the Panthers of 1st Battalion and Grenadiers from 2nd Battalion, Regiment 6, Reich in support. The whole force was a spearhead of steel and will, grim men trained for breakthrough, now once again being hurled into the fire. The operation was set to begin in earnest at 200 hours on the 2nd, but problems were already brewing. SS Obersturmbannführer Wenke, frustrated with poor radio reception in his command Tiger No. 901, was forced to dismount and switch vehicles. Even before the shooting began, technical faults were chewing away at their momentum. Then came Dunaalmas. The first Tiger approached the western edge of the village, its hull gliding over the frozen road, muzzle raised slightly toward the tree line. There was no warning, just the crack of a Soviet gun hidden deep in a dugout. A single shell slammed into the side of the Tiger. Inside, radio operator Eric Lamecool was torn from his post. The round had severed his foot just below the ankle. He collapsed, screaming, blood soaking the compartment as the rest of the crew scrambled to stabilize him. Seconds later, the engine cut, the lead tank was immobilized. With the air growing colder and the sun still far from rising, Lemcool was evacuated by motorcycle to the Divisional Field Hospital in Komarom. From there, he would be transferred to Linz. His war, at least for now, was over. Just west of the village, another Tiger was hit. SS Unterscharführer Lachner's machine came under anti-tank fire and ground to a halt, tracks twisted and wheels locked. Behind them, the column stalled. From within the stalled vehicles came orders: move, reform, advance. Out of the frozen shadows rolled the command, Panther I-01, led by SS Sturmbannführer Meyerdress, the seasoned iron-willed commander of I Battalion. Behind him followed Panther 102, commanded by SS Obersturmbannführer Strobel, the adjutant of the battalion. Meyerdress's tank took point. He signaled for a temporary halt, climbed down, and issued new instructions to those around him in clipped, practiced tones. Then, at 0645 hours, just as the lead tanks began to push through the center of the village, the next blow struck. Hidden in the rubble, a Soviet Su-85 from the 1438th Self-Propelled Artillery Regiment fired one precise shot. It slammed into the rear turret of Meyerdress's Panther, killing him and the entire turret crew instantly. The blast tore through steel and flesh alike. The Panther, still rolling, veered off the road and crashed into a house next to the village church. The driver and radio operator, both wounded, crawled from the wreckage as smoke and dust began to rise. There was a pause, a moment of confusion and rage, then vengeance. Panther 103, trailing just behind, locked eyes on the muzzle flash. Without hesitation, it returned fire. The 75mm round struck the Su-85 directly, obliterating it with a single shot. The Soviet position had revealed itself too late. The street quieted. Meyerdress was gone. Command of the Panther Battalion passed to SS Obersturmbannführer Ernst, who left 7th Company to assume control of the shattered advance. The next task was recovery. Berger Panther BW1 rolled forward to retrieve the wrecked I-01. As mechanics worked under tension, the Soviets tried again. 4 shots from hidden anti-tank guns rang out, all aimed at the recovery vehicle. Every shot missed. by sheer luck or providence, the Burj Panther completed its mission and hauled the broken tank back toward Axe. It was no use. Panther I-01 was later declared a total loss on the 5th of February. With Dunalmas finally cleared, the column pressed onward. The Tigers and Panthers rolled south through Nesmeli and Suto, then down along the hills near Kava. The fighting was constant, artillery to the left, tank fire to the right, machine gun bursts echoing in the gullies. By mid-afternoon outside Nyergesujfalu, the Panther Battalion came across a Soviet motorized column. They opened fire without hesitation. Trucks erupted into flame. Ammunition exploded. Vehicles tumbled into ditches. It was a massacre. Nyergesujfalu itself was taken soon after, and there Totenkopf's forward elements linked up with the 96th Infantry Division, which had been advancing from the north, but the price had been steep. Among the Tigers, more damage had been done. SS Oberscharführer Tonges's tank had taken hits to the tracks and running gear from Soviet anti-tank guns along the river road. It was immobilized, another machine down. 7 Tigers had fallen out from either combat damage or mechanical failure, including the Tiger of SS Oberscharführer Tassler. As the regiment regrouped in Nyergesujfalu, the remaining Tigers of 9th Company and the Panthers of 1st Battalion caught their breath. For now, they had seized ground. But the steel toll was climbing, and the Danube was far from quiet. The night was black when the tanks began to move. At 0100 hours on 2 January 1945, with no moon above and the air cold enough to bite through gloves, the Tigers and Panzer rifles of Totenkopf pushed along the Nyergesujfalu-Bayot road, cutting through the dark forest like armoured shadows. But no movement on this front stayed hidden for long. Somewhere high above, the Il-2 Sturmovix of the 10th Assault Air Corps from the 17th Air Army had found them. The shriek of engines broke through the trees. Seconds later, the bombs came down. One Panther exploded in a fireball, lifted briefly off the ground before crashing back in ruin. Another Panther was badly damaged, flames licking at its rear as crewmen scrambled out into the snow. The column pressed on regardless. South of Bajot, grenadiers from Regiment Eike attacked under cover of the trees, overrunning a Soviet anti-tank position. By dawn, the tanks rolled into Bajot, exhausted, blackened, but still operational. There they refueled, rearmed and braced for the next blow. In Bajna, the Panzer IVs of 5th Company ran into stiff resistance. 3 Tigers from 9th Company were called forward. 2 Panthers attempted to flank the village across open terrain, while the lead Tiger, under SS Standartenoberjunker Blau, rolled ahead toward the church. SS Obersturmbannführer Wenke followed in the rear. Blau leaned from his hatch as he passed a Panzer IV and shouted, "Where is the music?" One of the crewmen pointed toward the church and said, "Careful, they're waiting for you." They were. As Blau's Tiger crept past the stone wall, a volley of Soviet tank fire struck. The hull rocked violently. One shell tore through the turret, and the impact blew Blau clean out of the hatch. He hit the ground with a thud and didn't move. He was dead before he landed. His crew abandoned the burning Tiger. He was posthumously promoted to SS Untersturmführer later that month. A second Tiger moved into the kill zone and was immediately hit. It lurched to a halt, smoke pouring from its hatches. Then came Wenke's Tiger. He called in air support, carefully surveyed the battlefield, and picked his target. With one thunderous round, Wenke's gunner knocked out a T-34/85 hiding behind a barn. 10 minutes later, 2 Ju-88s screamed overhead, dropping their payloads on the Russian positions. A nearby Panther covered the crippled Tigers while the flanking Panthers knocked out the remaining Soviet anti-tank guns. Blau's Tiger was later recovered and shipped to the Vienna arsenal for repairs. On 4th January, the advance pushed towards Zomor, but Russian armour was already reported in the woods southeast of Bajna. The grenadiers formed up. The tanks rolled out. Gyarmatpshes and Epol became names burned into memory. villages where fire came from every window and shell fire never stopped. 5 Panzer IVs from 7th Company were lost in the chaos. 2 Tigers had to hold position and provide covering fire as the Panthers faced off against Soviet JS2s. The snow was slick with ash and blood by nightfall. Then came 5th January. The attack on Shomor was launched from the northwest via Giamelli. The Panzergruppe, now under SS Obersturmbannführer Lachmann, pushed hard along narrow, ice-rutted roads. 2 Panthers were hit as they approached the village, one in the turret, one in the track. Both caught fire, their crews leaping for the ditches. The grenadiers from the 3rd Battalion of Regiment Eike and the 2nd Battalion of Regiment 5 Totenkopf attacked both flanks of the village to clear the anti-tank gun fronts. The Tigers held the line when a Soviet counterattack came from the direction of Somodor-Sis. Infantry and tanks surged forward but were turned back by heavy German fire. By day's end, SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 6 had dug in between Hill 357 and Hill 289 east of Shomor, supported by the remaining Panthers. The next morning, 6th January, the battle shifted toward Jambeck. The attack began with the 3rd Battalion of Regiment Eike assaulting Hill 317, while the Tigers of 9th Company rolled forward down the Somor-Zambeck road. 2 Tigers veered off to the right, moving through exposed fields. The Russians were waiting. From concealed positions near Felsors Pesis, anti-tank guns opened fire at just 50 meters. Both Tigers were struck immediately. SS Obersturmbannführer Wenke's Tiger took hits to the hull and turret. Inside the turret, SS Rottenführer Krippel's left arm was crushed between the recoil guard and the breech. Wenke jumped from the turret and sprinted back through shellfire to bring a medic. Together with the orderly from the 2nd Battalion, they performed a field amputation on the spot. No anesthetic, just sheer will. Krippel would survive and be treated later in Salzburg. A 3rd Tiger moved in to provide covering fire. Then another, commanded by SS Unterscharführer Privatsky, was hit by 76mm guns. The shells slammed into the right side of the hull and the front bow plate. The crew bailed out under fire. Wounded in the action were Westerling, who would be evacuated on the 23rd, radio operator Doomke, Loder Kraus, and SS Rottenführer Buss. Wenke's Tiger was recovered and sent to the Vienna arsenal. Westerlings, left in the open between Shomor and Jambeck, was later converted into a command post by the 3rd Cavalry Brigade and finally abandoned on 28 February. On 7th January, SS Obersturmbannführer Neff returned from home leave and reassumed command of 9th Company. Wenke transferred to 5th Company of 2nd Battalion. That same morning, another push towards Zambeck began. At 0700, SS Panzer Artillery Regiment 3 laid down a 1-hour barrage. 10 Panthers from RI's battalion, with grenadiers in support, moved to flank the Russian line. They reached the Felsors Psizenes-Meni junction. Then it happened. Fire erupted from Soviet Su-100s of the 382nd Guards Self-Propelled Artillery Regiment. This was their first appearance. Their fire was devastating. 1 Panther was knocked out and 9 more were hit and disabled. The Su-100s had little infantry support. What little they had scattered under fire, forcing Su-100 crews to dismount and defend themselves. Despite the losses, SS Sturmbannführer Krass in his command Panther knocked out 2 Soviet tanks. SS Panzer Regiment Dry claimed 17 Soviet tanks destroyed in the fighting. The 382nd lost 11 Su-100s, and supporting tank units lost additional T-34s and 1 heavy JS-type vehicle. On 8th January, Totenkopf was pulled into reserve in Shomor. 5th Company would soon help repel Soviet attacks to the east, while I and 3rd Battalions of Regiment Eike with Companions 6 and 7 pushed toward Meni and Jambeck, near Hill 268, I Battalion came under intense fire and had to dig in. In the village of Many, 3rd Battalion got into hand-to-hand combat. Every yard was paid for in blood. Near Somor, the 2nd Battalion of Regiment Eike repelled a Russian attack, supported by the Panzer IVs of 5th Company. On 9th January, the Soviets tried again, launching an assault on Somor from Felsurs-Sers. The Tigers of 9th Company stood firm and held the line. On 10th January, fresh replacement troops arrived for the regiment, but none for 9th Company. Their losses would not be replenished, not yet. Then, on the 13th of January, the tide began to shift again. Totenkopf was ordered to begin withdrawing. The 3rd Cavalry Brigade would take over the front. The division would move to Komarom for yet another relief operation, this time to strike south and break the siege of Budapest. The move was slow. There weren't enough trains, only 2 rail transports ran per day, with too few flat cars to carry the entire regiment, so the tanks were ordered to march by road through Naigmand, Bana, Gyorzabadhegi, into the Bakony Hills, through Vesprem-Varsany, Bakony-Szentkirály, Magyar-Szentkirály, Bakony-Oszlop, Cseteny, and Zirk. The final destination, the assembly area at Berhida. Those lucky enough to be loaded onto rail were sent to Vesprem. As they rolled away from Zomor, many glanced back. Smoke still hung over the hills. The battlefield was littered with burned tanks and shattered villages. The road ahead would lead to Budapest, and the fire had only just begun. Hungary, 24 December 1944. It should have been a night of calm. Inside a schoolhouse near Komarom, the men of the 9th Company gathered for a modest Christmas celebration. Candles flickered, and in the freezing silence, laughter echoed softly, half-hearted, as if borrowed from another world. The regimental commander, SS Obersturmbannführer Lachmann, arrived in the evening and spoke a few brief words. He didn't stay long. Not long after he left, the mood shattered. An order came through. Immediate readiness. The company was to move. The war wasn't waiting for anyone. On 25th December, the men packed their gear, loading it into Tigers and supply trucks, and moved to the rail station. By the 26th of December, they were standing in the bitter cold on iron tracks, loading 11 operational Tigers into transports, each man's breath rising in clouds. Their destination, Hungary. By the evening of the 30th, the transport finally arrived at Komarom. They disembarked in the dark and drove to Fort Igmand, a massive stone fortress built decades earlier for cavalry. The Hungarian hussars had once trained there. Now it belonged to the Waffen-SS. Snow lined the roads. In the frigid caverns of the barracks, the Tigers were refueled, rearmed, and camouflaged. On 31st December, Wenke received final orders. At 2100 hours on New Year's Day, the Tiger Company would spearhead the attack along the Danube Shore Road. Their objective, advance through Dunalmas and link up with the 96th Infantry Division near Nyíregyszújfalu to help form a bridgehead. 1st January 1945. The plan unraveled before it began. Mechanical issues caused delays. Radio silence was imposed. To mask the engines, the Luftwaffe flew overhead, drawing Soviet attention toward Budapest. Just before midnight, contact was made. The lead Tiger, Taslas, was hit by fire on the edge of Dunalmas. The road had been mined, but the column veered off and pushed left, slipping past the danger. Walter Weber of 5th Company remembered the moment they began rolling at 2000 hours. We were all thrilled to attack as one unit again, the Tiger Company in front, Panthers following. Then everything went black. Erich Lemkuhl never forgot that night. As his Tiger rounded a bend in the road, a round tore through the hull. Pain surged through his left foot. He climbed out the radio hatch and dropped into snow. No footprints, he remembered. Not good. In the moonlight, he raised his leg. It was gone up to the Achilles heel. He lay there shouting. Another tank passed, then was knocked out. He doesn't know how long he waited. Then came the medic, then the sidecar motorcycle, then darkness. He woke up in the field hospital, Fort Igmand. He was the first to be operated on. Later, Company Spieß Hauptscharführer Benecke came to visit, handed him the Iron Cross First Class and a small package of chocolate. 2nd January. The fighting in Dunalmas continued through the morning. 7 Tigers were lost to mechanical breakdown or damage. By afternoon, they linked up with the 96th Infantry Division in Nirgasuchfalu. Wenke gave a short report. He was informed that SS Sturmbannführer Meyer Dress, Knight's Cross and Oak Leaves holder, had been killed when an Su-85 struck his Panther. It was a grim reminder, no one was invincible. In Bajot, the advance resumed. 3rd January. The village of Bajna was heavily defended. 3 Tigers were called up to support the Panzer Fies of 5th Company. SS Oberjunker Blau, recently arrived, led the attack. "Where's the music?" he joked to a Panzer IV crewman who pointed to the church. But as Blau's Tiger rolled past, Soviet shells struck. The impact threw him from the turret, dead before he hit the ground. The 2nd Tiger was struck and disabled. The 3rd, Venki's, advanced cautiously, calling in air support. Ju-88s flew over and bombed the Russian positions. In the smoke, 3 T-34s were knocked out. 4th January. More tanks were reported in woods southeast of Bajna. The Tigers moved to meet them. The first Soviet tank was hit and burst into flame. The rest turned and ran. That day, the Tiger Company stood tall. Walter Weber remembered Wenke's Tiger rolling through the mist, cloak draped in a thick fur coat, calmly directing fire. 5th January. The attack on Zomor began. 9th Company was ordered to hold the left flank. The advance was smooth, no losses, but by evening, the Russians counterattacked from Somodor Pies. 1 Tiger knocked out a Soviet tank at 50 meters. The rest withdrew. Then came the mortars, shattering, thunderous, unrelenting. 6th January. Only 3 Tigers remained operational. The company moved toward Jambek across mist-covered fields. Soviet anti-tank guns opened fire at close range. Wenke's Tiger was hit. A shell tore through the turret and smashed into the breach, trapping Gustav Krippel's arm. It was wedged between the recoil guard and shield. Under fire, Wenke dismounted, ran for help, and returned with a medic. There was no morphine. The arm was amputated on the spot. A 3rd Tiger moved up to cover them, but another, commanded by Pravatsky, was hit by 76mm shells. The crew bailed out. Westerling, wounded, was evacuated weeks later. Radio operators, loaders, commanders, all were bleeding or dead. Wenke's Tiger 901 was salvaged and sent to the Vienna arsenal. Westerling's Tiger was left behind and later turned into a command post by the 3rd Cavalry Brigade. In the biting darkness of early January 1945, the Tigers of Schwer Panzerabteilung 509 rolled out of the forests of Sennelager, their crews fresh from conversion training on the Tiger II. The massive tanks, armed, armoured and awe-inspiring, were the pride of the German panzer forces, but they had yet to taste blood in Hungary. From 5th December to 1st January, the battalion had been fitted out with 45 Königstigers. Now it was time to put them to use. By the 18th of January, the order came. At 0500 hours, SS Panzer Regiment 3 began its offensive out of Kungos, the Tigers of 509 attached and ready. Major Burmeister, commanding the battalion, gave the signal. On their left flank, Kampfgruppe Kleffner, built around SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 6 Eicher, moved in support, commanded by the capable SS Obersturmbannführer Kleffner. At the head of the assault, riding in his Befehlspanther, was SS Sturmbannführer Pichelis, leading the push. Russian forward observers watched in alarm as some 20 Panzers, Tigers and others moved into view. Then came mines. Engineers rushed forward to clear the path, careful to avoid not only buried explosives but electrically charged cables meant to detonate from a distance. It slowed the attack. Frustration grew. Forced to adapt, Kampfgruppe Pichelis pivoted north, then swung wide south of hills 188 and 197 near Jeno, driving straight into Sandorka. The town fell after heavy contact. Almost immediately, Soviet tanks, coming from Fule, charged to counterattack. The Tigers and Panthers turned to meet them. Gunfire flashed, snow melted under engine heat, and the Russian assault was shattered. Still, the road ahead was far from open. Pichelis pushed east, but the Russians had dug in west of Polgady, laying a powerful anti-tank front. SS Panzer Artillerieabteilung 3 moved to outflank it. North of Falubatian, Kampfgruppe Kleffner, now reinforced with the Tigers of 509, advanced slowly. Among them, the Tiger of SS Oberscharführer Tonges took another hit, his second in a matter of days. The main gun was damaged again, and Tonges was slightly wounded, but the Tigers fought on. By midday, the Tiger IIs of 509 reached the outskirts of Sabad-Batian, where the bridge over the Marlum Canal loomed large and vital. 50 meters short of the crossing, Soviet engineers triggered explosives. The bridge collapsed in a plume of smoke. The Tigers halted. From across the canal came Soviet anti-tank fire and airstrikes. The Russians threw everything at the canal line. 3 Tiger IIs were hit, immobilized, and ultimately abandoned. A demolition team from the 509's Werkstatt later returned and destroyed the tanks on 22nd January to prevent their capture. Elsewhere in Sabad-Batian, Kampfgruppe Pichelis had breached the town centre and began pressing east towards Serejeliye. But as 2 Panthers tried to cross another bridge spanning the new Sarviz Canal, disaster struck again. The lead Panther crossed safely, only to be blown apart by a shell from the 10th Russian anti-tank artillery brigade. The 2nd Panther followed but never made it. The bridge collapsed beneath its weight, taking the tank with it. The advance ground to a halt. The engineers from SS Panzer Pioneer Battalion 3 scrambled to act. They began repair work on the Marlom and Sarviz Canal bridges and started laying the foundations for a new 40-ton bridge. Totenkopf had suffered losses: 1 Panzer IV, 2 Panthers, and 1 Stugee, and more wounds. Tonges was hit, and Major Burmeister, the 509's battalion commander, was seriously wounded. Command of the battalion passed to Hauptmann Dr. König. On 19th January, the new bridge over the Sarviz Canal was completed, rated at 44 tons. Panthers, Panzer IVs and Stugs from SS Panzer Regiment 3 crossed first, followed by the Tigers of 9th Company. But the Tiger IIs of 509 were too heavy. They needed another route. A shallow section of the canal was found near a railway bridge at Sabad-Batian. With no time to lose, engineers began laying wooden railway sleepers across the canal bed. Slowly, the makeshift crossing took shape. By mid-afternoon, the Tiger IIs crawled across, steel treads pressing into creaking planks, every second tense. Once over, Pichelis resumed the advance. Fövni Pushta fell in the late afternoon. The Panzers pressed on, but worsening weather forced a halt before Serejeliye. Fog, snow and biting wind made movement nearly impossible. The next morning, 20th January, Kampfgruppe Pichelis launched a renewed assault on Serejeliye, now joined by SS Panzerjägerabteilung 3. The fighting was brutal. In the town's northern sector, Totenkopf and the 5th SS Panzer Division Wiking converged, 2 hardened divisions fighting in tandem. The southern half was assaulted by the grenadiers of the 1st Battalion, Regiment 5 Totenkopf, who were mechanized and well equipped. Casualties followed swiftly. 1st Company of SS Panzerjägerabteilung 3 lost 2 Jagdpanzer I4s. Smoke rolled through the streets, and the thunder of tank fire echoed across the open fields. Yet the Germans pushed forward, inch by inch, street by street. The King Tigers had finally joined the battle, but the price of every kilometre was rising, and Budapest still lay ahead, bleeding and encircled. By this point, Kampfgruppe Pichelis had turned northeast, beginning its advance on the village of Diniz. The heavy tanks of Schwer Panzerabteilung 509 moved in parallel toward the airfield at Borgond. But already the battalion was suffering from severe shortages of fuel and ammunition. In the afternoon, tanks from SS Panzer Regiment 3 rolled into Diniz and pushed along the southern embankment road toward Kisvalenche. The force numbered 7 tanks and around 120 grenadiers. As they approached, Russian defensive fire rang out. 2 tanks were hit and damaged, forcing the group to retreat. 1 Soviet anti-tank gun was destroyed before the withdrawal. To the west of Kisvalenche, Totenkopf launched an assault against the 63rd Cavalry Division and elements of the 69th Guards Rifle Division near Hill 103. The attack began around 1800 hours. The Panzergruppe from SS Panzer Regiment 3 made 4 separate assaults on the Soviet line before being forced to fall back. That same day, SS Sturmbannführer Anton Berlin took over command of 1st Battalion, SS Panzer Regiment 3. On the 21st of January, Soviet intelligence reported that around 40 tanks and self-propelled guns had assembled near Gardeny during the early morning hours. A battalion of grenadiers was also present. At approximately 0800 hours, Kampfgruppe Picheles launched an attack from Diniz toward Agard. The group broke through a Soviet anti-tank gun screen and captured a guard. The momentum continued across open terrain as the Panzers veered southeast to strike at Kisvalenche and Kaplos-Naznyek. Soviet estimates put the attacking force at 25 tanks. As always, SS Sturmbannführer Picheles rode in the lead Befehlspanther. But as they pressed forward, the group was struck by heavy anti-tank fire from Soviet positions southeast of the village. 6 tanks assaulted Kaplos-Naznyek from the west, but by day's end, 2 Befehlspanthers and 2 Panthers from SS Panzer Regiment 3 lay destroyed. The wrecks would not be recovered until the year 1950. Meanwhile, a main Panzergruppe of 15 tanks with mounted grenadiers broke through near Kisvalenche at 1700 hours and reached the western edge of Kaplos-Naznyek and Hill 120. In response, the Soviets deployed the 1st Guards Mechanized Brigade. It arrived at around 1600 hours, bringing with it Su-100 self-propelled guns. Forming up to the south of Kisvalenche were 1st and 3rd Battalions of SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 6 Eiche, supported by 1st Battalion of Panzer Regiment 24, equipped with Panthers. Their objective was to open the valley sector and establish a bridgehead after capturing Kaplos-Naznyek. Supporting them was Schwer Panzerabteilung 509, SS Hauptsturmführer Leibel, commander of 2nd Battalion, SS Panzer Regiment 3, was ordered to proceed to the area of Felsobesi-no-Pusta and launch an attack on Barakska from the south. The order caused uproar, no reconnaissance, no preparation. During the nighttime march, 6 Tiger II tanks suffered mechanical failures, while 2 others collided in the darkness. The assault on Kaplos-Naznyek by the grenadiers of Regiment Eiche dragged on for over 4 hours, yielding only a shallow foothold before they were forced to retreat. SS Panzer Regiment 3 lost 4 Panthers as total losses, while 1 Tiger I was heavily damaged by Soviet fire. 1st Battalion, Panzer Regiment 24 lost 9 Panthers. The Soviets lost 3 T-34 tanks, 2 self-propelled guns, and 12 anti-tank guns, but claimed 8 tanks and 1 armoured personnel carrier destroyed on the 21st. By the 22nd, damaged tanks from the prior day were pulled back for repairs. The remaining machines took part in an assault on the northern edge of Kaplos-Naznyek under heavy snowfall. Russian resistance was fierce. All of the Tigers involved were hit and had to be withdrawn. To the south, Schwer Panzerabteilung 509 and elements of SS Panzer Artillerieabteilung 3 attempted to break through south of Baraska and reach the Vali Canal, but the Soviets had fortified the sector. The battalion managed to push as far as Kishalom Pusta before the lack of fuel and ammunition forced a retreat. During the day, SS Panzerjäger Abteilung 3 lost 3 Jagdpanzer, 4 tanks. SS Scharführer Hugo Reis, a truck driver in 9th Company, was killed near Agard. Dr. Koenig wrote later, "During a snowstorm, we heard that Hauptsturmführer Leibel had been seriously wounded. Of the 26 operational Tiger II tanks we had on the 20th, only 12 remain. The rest were either destroyed or sidelined by mechanical failure. That afternoon, a convoy of 9 vehicles was towed back to the rear for repairs. At around 1100 hours on the 23rd, Totenkopf launched another attack on Kaplosnasnyek. 3rd Battalion of SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 6 Eike led the charge, supported by 15 tanks. The Soviets launched multiple counterattacks throughout the day, but all were repelled. 1st Battalion of Panzer Regiment 24, with 31 operational Panthers, fought between Kaplosnasnyek and Valencia, knocking out 4 Soviet tanks. By sunset, Kaplosnasnyek was finally in German hands. To the south, Schwer Panzerabteilung 509 tried once more to advance toward Kishalom, but spent the day fighting off repeated Soviet counterattacks before withdrawing to Felsobesino-Pusta. On the same day, the commander of the 509th submitted a written complaint to the General Inspector of Panzer Troops, General Oberst Heinz Guderian. The complaint detailed poor coordination, late orders, lack of engineer support, weak leadership decisions, and unsuitable terrain for Tiger operations. By the 24th, the Germans reorganized. 3 battle groups were formed: SS Panzer Regiment 3, 1st Battalion of Panzer Regiment 24, and Schwer Panzerabteilung 509. Each group had between 10 and 12 tanks. Their goal: strike toward Barakska. The Tiger Battalion had 9 operational Tiger II tanks and was placed under Kampfgruppe Eckert of SS Panzer Grenadier Regiment 5 Totenkopf. Their task: take Kishalom and Hill 157 and build a bridgehead across the Vali Canal. Fighting erupted around Hill 157. In just 20 minutes, the Tigers knocked out 15 Soviet tanks and a large number of anti-tank guns. Kampfgruppe Kleffner, composed of Regiment Eike and supported by 1st 5 remained. 5 Tigers from the Heavy Battalion arrived at the Regiment Eike command post. By midnight, just 2 were still operational. Kampfgruppe from 1st Panzer Division moved north from Kaplosnasnyek. At 2200 hours, SS Panzer Regiment 3's lead tanks came under fire while moving toward Petend. Around 1.5 kilometers west of the village, the Tiger of SS Unterscharführer Becker was hit by 2 85mm rounds, 1 in the bow plate, 1 in the running gear. The crew bailed out. The Soviets later recovered the tank and gave it trophy number 60 on the 11th of February. In the early hours of the 25th, Kampfgruppe Kleffner battled through Petend. Panzer Regiment 24 knocked out 6 Soviet tanks. After capturing Adam Major, they reached the southern outskirts of Barakska. Around 1300 hours, 2 Panthers from SS Panzer Regiment 3 attempted to push along the Petend-Barakska road, but were halted by Soviet airstrikes and resistance from the 63rd Guards Cavalry Division. Panzer Division knocked out 17 Soviet tanks. By the end of the day, Petend was in German hands. However, SS Panzer Regiment 3 and its Tank Destroyer Battalion lost 3 Panzer IV tanks, 1 Tiger, 4 Stug assault guns, and 1 Jagdpanzer IV. SS Panzer Artillery Regiment 3 lost 1 Hummel, 3 Wespen, and 1 Panzer Artillery Observation Vehicle. Schwer Panzerabteilung 509 lost 1 Tiger II west of Petend. The 26th of January brought yet another attack. Kampfgruppe Pichelis, reinforced with 3 Tiger II tanks and 5 Panthers, launched from Petend toward Passmand and Vereb. During the assault on Barakska, the Tiger of SS Hauptscharführer Berger was hit by a 76mm round in the turret. The round also damaged the engine deck. The radio operator, SS Sturman Ettmeyer, and driver, SS Sturman Karl Dietz, were both killed. Berger was wounded and evacuated. The Russians later examined the Tiger on the 23rd of February and gave it trophy number 135. 2 more Tiger II tanks were lost on the northern edge of Barakska near the rail line. As the Kampfgruppe pushed toward Vereb, Pichelis's command Panther was struck. He dismounted and tried to transfer to another vehicle but was hit by shrapnel. He died 20 minutes later and was buried on the 31st in Veszprém. With his death, SS Panzer Regiment 3 came under the temporary command of SS Obersturmbannführer Dr. Gerhard Adam. A bridgehead was formed over the Vali Canal between Val and Kayashoschenpeter, but as Russian reinforcements arrived from Lovospereni, Kampfgruppe Philipp was recalled. That night, the Soviets launched an assault on Vereb with around 40 tanks. It was repelled. Still, the Germans had paid dearly. SS Panzer Regiment 3 and SS Panzerjägerabteilung. 3 lost 1 Tiger and 1 Jagdpanzer 4. Schwer Panzerabteilung 509 lost 2 Tiger, 2 tanks. 1 hit 9 times with 4 crewmen killed. The other hit 4 times with 3 crewmen dead. The battle for Hungary dragged on, and winter showed no mercy.